Filming a yacht race has never been easy. The surface is anything but stable, and the field of play will never fit into one frame. And then there's the problem of getting the signal back to shore. But when cup boats climbed up onto hydrofoils, that's when the problems really started. It's always been a challenge to film sailing. The environment does everything it can to make it tough. But keeping up with the new generation of cup boats as they hit speeds of over 50 knots has taken the challenge of bringing the pictures ashore onto another level. In the air, helicopter shots are now commonplace. But down at sea level, it's hydrofoils that provide part of the answer. But not just any old hydrofoil boat. A zero-emissions, hydrogen fuel cell-powered machine, Chase Zero. Stabilised cameras are expensive, but in this environment the images speak for themselves. Even so, if the platform they're on can't keep up, they're struggling from the start. And as the America's Cup launched itself onto foils and took a bigger step up into new speed territory, only a helicopter could follow the action. And while the Cup coverage relied heavily on shots from the air, this event was to deliver another solution. Put the camera boat on foils too. And that took filming into completely new territory.
Regularly gets to 50, and yeah, we're running a camera pointing it at a racing boat at those speeds, which is something we haven't done before.
I mean, it's a complicated system that will stabilise the shots that we're doing up to a point whereupon the forces on the camera get overloaded and the image drops out, which is bad for the camera and bad for the image. But here we've bumped that limit up by 25 more knots.
When it comes to filming high-performance boats at speed, boat captain Alistair Moore and camera operator Adam Brown are two of the most experienced people in the world. More from them in a minute. But first, how did the foiling camera boat come about? The project started with a rule change. In a new initiative for the 37th America's Cup, the protocol stated that every team had to build a hydrogen fuel cell powered foiling chase boat. Having made the rule, Emirates Team New Zealand led the way and built the first example. By the time the Cup kicked off in Barcelona, there were various versions. Meanwhile, the prototype had been modified to be the lead on-water camera boat.
Well, Alistair, this is it.
Yeah, here she is, Chase Zero, the prototype foiling boat that Team New Zealand built about 2 and a bit years ago.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, no, she's a little bit of a minter, really.
Yeah. You spent quite a lot of time on this boat, haven't you?
Yes. No, this is where I seem to find myself most days of recent. She's a 10.5 metre catamaran. It's got a big H foil underneath about where we're standing and a single rudder at the back.
Right.
Powertrain goes down the uprights just to a normal 90-degree drive and normal-ish propellers slung on the back of the main foil down nice and deep. We can select what ride height we want to fly at, and we've got sensors around the boat that are giving us about 60 shots a second, so that's what the computer is flying the boat.
So what kind of speed do you take off at?
So yeah, it's about 20 knots is what we need to climb out of the water, and we can run the boat up to about 30 knots in displacement mode. So not select a ride height, just run it at displacement. But that gets quite thirsty and quite wet. You can imagine with quite a wedgy shape.
Yeah. Any
sea state gets picked up. But as soon as you're foiling, it's very dry. As a camera platform, it's a game changer.
After Villanova and Jeddah, we realised that was, especially here off the Spanish coast on the Med, that the sea states we're going to be dealing with were far more complicated than what we'd seen before in Auckland and Bermuda, especially, which was nice and flat. So Glenn Ashby actually from ETNZ was on board, and it was with him we drove quite hard to try to get one of these prototype hydrogen foiling boats pressed into our service of television, which we're very grateful that happened, because it's taken us a while to mode it and to work out how to drive it so that we can get what we need to do across the water, because it's a complicated boat to to drive and run. But when we're on the zone, we're doing things we've never been able to do before. We haven't gone upwind at 45, approaching 50 knots into a sea state. We can now. And even if we could, use a different boat, it would have such a big wake, or would be pounding so hard it would make it impossible to operate. But we have pretty much no wake and no cavitation in the water, so we really can be in the racetrack without disturbing the racing at all.
So the two Toyota hydrogen fuel cells, one on each bow, 4 tanks, 2 on each side, and they make electricity. And so just using the fuel cells, we're good for about 34 knots. And then we've got 2 500-volt batteries that we can use for a sprint, up to about 10 minutes at wide open. And then when you slow down to below 33 knots, the fuel cells charge the batteries up.
Right.
So it's an autonomous system. You don't have to plug it into the dock.
Right. And the big advantage, the big benefit of hydrogen is zero emissions, isn't it? Just
Zero
come up with
emissions,
water.
just a little bit of purified water, and not a huge volume. Fueling times are getting better and better. We can go from empty to full in about 45 minutes. And it gives us a working range of about 180 miles.
Oh, right. That's a decent distance, isn't it?
That's at about 32 knots.
Right.
If you're driving it like I'm driving it, maybe a bit less.
Yeah.
We're trying our best to work out how we can use this boat to get things, the images that we haven't done before. But for the moment, we're getting the quality of shots that we've sort of been used to seeing at big events like this. But we just simply wouldn't have been able to get them because we just didn't have anything that can track up one of the boats at the speeds that these guys are doing. And we're still starting to make a little bit more magic. And Alistair's never driven a boat like that. I've never operated a camera on a boat like that. So it's a big learning curve.
To maximise the time you can keep the yachts in frame, I would like to be having my bows pointing down course as they approach the top mark, but then I'm not safe. If there's a luff or someone has a situation that can't get a foil down, I don't have an escape route. So I'm playing between transverse thrust to spin the boat without going forwards after they've rounded, or doing an arc at displacement speed before I line up my course and feed the power. So if it's really rough, I'm finding that the driving the boat around a corner is faster, but if it's flat, transverse thrust is faster.
So, I mean, the controls look pretty straightforward. It looks like any other motorboat.
Very, very, very similar. Basically, a throttle for each motor. The trim buttons are wired for ride height, so I can pre-select how high I want the boat to come out of the water. So it'll go to a maximum of 1.2 metres, which feels quite high. And that's great in flat water. But if there's any sea state or swell, you can create quite a lot of inertia with that much height above the foil, and that's what will trip it out. It's a roll or a change in roll too quickly. Oof, the computer says no, and it'll set you back down. So riding it slightly lower in rougher weather makes it a lot safer and a lot more reliable.
Yeah.
When anybody comes on this boat, they really don't kind of realise the level of drama and the split-second decisions that have to be made. And also, I've never been particularly afraid to do what I do. I look out the window sometimes and see some swell come in and just going, oh my God, are we going to get through that? And it's moderately hair-raising, to be honest. But no, the camera and the boat smooths everything out on television. Everything looks calm and controlled, but I think if you come on board here, you'll realise we're on edge. Quite seriously on this boat. Well, on all the boats, to be honest, and in the Hillies. It's a very dynamic environment and with a lot of things to consider with our safety, the safety of everybody else around us, and the looking after the shot, which is our main job.
As far as having minimal impact on what we're covering, there hasn't been better. And then speeds and stability and no slamming, just have, game changer.
Yeah, amazing.
It's definitely going to be the way forward for the job that I have to do, without a doubt.
A sustainable future. Yanmar.